hello there.
And welcome back, friends, to another episode of Lynch Paints, where I, Lynch, will be showing you all how to paint Obi Wan Kenobi. No, not that Obi Wan Kenobi.
So uncivilized.
For Star Wars Legion. So let's grab our paints, paintbrushes and our lightsabers and let's dive straight into it. But before we get started, you handsome devils, we're going to need a selection of paints, and these are the ones I've used in this video today, alongside which we will need a medium-sized brush, a finer detail brush, and a teeny weeny teeny tiny brush for those teeny tiny places. Right, so the first step, of course, is going to be applying a white acrylic primer all over the model. And you can use Citadel, which is what I tend to use, even though it is quite expensive, or you can use any sort of white acrylic primer you fancy. Now, the next step, once it's dry, of course it's dry, is that we're going to be applying a possibly white contrast paint over the white armour. So for this, we're going to grab a medium-sized brush, and then we're just going to pick out the white armour. Now moving on to the next step, just to minimalise sort of time waiting for stuff to dry, we're going to move over to doing this cloth work. So I've got this Skeleton Horde contrast paint, and again, you don't have to use the Games Workshop ones if you don't like. You can use any kind of equivalent that is out there on the market. So it's a bit dark for my liking. So we're just going to thin it down with a little bit of water, and then it's not going to be too brown because we want to aim for that sort of cream look. And we're just going to be careful, just bearing in mind not to get any of this onto the previous sort of white armour. So just as a quick tip, if there are areas that are looking a little bit too dark or it's kind of pooling a little bit, then what you can do is just wipe off some of the excess just to dry your brush out a little bit, and then using your slightly dry brush you can just use just the tip there just to absorb some of that excess using the, I think it's like some kind of capillary action with the bristles, just to help kind of tidy up a few areas just so then it's not as dark. So what we'll do is that we'll just leave it to dry, and then we'll move on to the next stage. So now moving on to the next step, now that the contrast paints have dried, we're going to take some of this Corax white, and then we're going to go back over the armour panels, just to make it stand out a little bit more. And then once we've done that, we will then, with our fine detail brush, highlight it using a little bit of white scar. So now we're moving over onto the white scar, and using the fine detail brush and just thin it down with a little bit of water, we're just going to start to highlight the white armour. So that's the white armour now finished. I had to go back over some of the areas a second time just to highlight it, just so it stands out a little bit more, but I think we got there. Also, as a quick note, you can always thin down the white and just use it as a glaze just over some of the surface areas where the light source is going to be hitting, so like the side of the leg here, top of the van braces and the shoulder pads as well. You don't have to do this, but it's an extra step that you could indeed take. So speaking of extra steps that you don't really necessarily have to do, but I'm going to do anyway, is we're going to grab this Screaming Skull, and then we're going to highlight the robes. So I'm just going to thin it down with just a little bit of water, and then we're just going to very lightly just go over like so. It won't stand out overly much to start with, but what we can do is that we can mix some of the white in with the Screaming Skull, and you know what, I'm actually going to do that now because it's not showing up very well. So let's do a 50-50 mix. Screaming Skull and White Scar. Okay, yep, that's standing out a little bit. That's a bit better. If it's maybe a little bit more white, why not? I mean, this you can alter depending on how your contrast paint had dried. If it was like really dark, then you don't need to add in that much white. If it turned out quite pale, then just stick some more white in and just have a little play around and see which mixture works best for you. So in the end, I ended up doing more of a 70-30 of White Scar to Screaming Skull with highlighting the robes, just because it wasn't quite bright enough for me, but now it's worked out pretty darn well. So we're going to move over to the dark areas now, and this is where we're going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to use some of this Black Legion contrast paint. And we're going to want a nice pointy brush. And we're going to very carefully just go in between the armor plates, just onto something like the under armor. So take your time with this, and just be sure to be very, very careful not to get any of this onto our lovely creams and white armor. So I ended up breaking that golden rule, that number one rule of not to get any black onto the white armor, but I managed to fix it. So I had a little cry, and then I came back and fixed it up. Got some little bits of white on there, and yeah, it's now tidy, it's now fixed, it's all good, no dramas. So I'm going to move on to his belt, and we're going to want some Mornfang brown, and again using the same nice fine brush. And just thin it down just a tad, just to help with the flow. We're going to very carefully paint his belt. So now that that has dried, we're then going to mix up some Screaming Skull and the Mornfang brown. And then we're just going to go over the belt and just pick out all the raised areas. And then we'll probably give it a wash with a little bit of black. So time for the shading, and I'm just going to use a little bit of this lovely Agrax Earth shade. So we're going to move over onto his lovely face. So for this we're going to need a mixture of Gene Sealer Purple and some of this Kisvel Flesh. And I find that the two work really, really well together. So I'm just going to grab my old mixing palette. I think it's like an old cavalry base, and as you can see, it has been used an awful lot. So I want a nice mix, probably 60-40-ish. You can always slap it on and then just see how it goes. So this would just be like the first tone colour. It is annoying that the lightsaber's in the way, but if you can bend it carefully, just tuck it under his arm, then it does mean you can get to his face much better. So we just want a nice, relatively thin, controlled layer over the top. And then what we'll do is that we'll start to mix in probably some of the Screaming Skull, just to lighten it up. And then eventually using pure Screaming Skull just to highlight it. With the beards, probably use a nice grey. And then the hair is a brown. So probably use some of that Mornfang brown that we had earlier for the belt. And do a similar thing with the belt for his hair. So we're just going to introduce a little bit of this Screaming Skull, and then just make sure you have a nice small brush or Just a brush with a very fine tip. Do excuse if you can pick it up on the mic. The sound of heavy rainfall, it's currently chucking it down. I think there's a thunderstorm on the rise, so yeah, sorry if you can hear that in the background. But I want to keep the window open just because it's very warm in here. So while painting his face, his hair, I realised that I haven't even done his eyes yet. So let's go and fix that. Let's give him some eyes. So, oh, another question as well. Do you think he should have eyebrows? So I think maybe he should. So let's give him some dark grey eyebrows. Because there's one thing I find that a lot of people sort of tend not to bother with, but obviously like humans, they look kind of weird without eyebrows. So let's give just a little slug there, and a little slug about there. So we're going to take our black, and with a really fine detail brush, I'm going to thin it down just a tad. We're going to make a little line just about there ish. Now really carefully the same on the other side. Cool, right, that's not too bad. It's always awkward trying to do, for me anyway, the right eye, but for me it's on the left. Because obviously I'm used to painting this way, I'm right-handed. So it might end up looking a little bit derpy, but we're going to try and do our best. So we're then going to take our white, and this is generally how I do eyes, to make it look like that they're not absolutely tripping balls. So we're going to take little dots, I'm going to put them slightly either side of the middle. Just like that. So we end up with just a little line in the middle. And it works most of the time. I say that now, and this side is not going to work very well. Or will I be lucky? Pretty lucky. I'm going to leave it like that. So, that is his face done. It looks a little bit kind of washed out just because of the lighting and such, but no, I'm quite happy with that. Quite happy indeed. So, I'm going to move on to his lightsaber, and I've left it under his arms, and now it's more like a banana, but it's all good. We can just bend it just a tad here and there, just to realign it. So, his lightsaber, we're going to need some silver. So I'm going to use this Runefang steel? No, Grey Light steel. And some nice gold. I'm going to have a nice bright gold, so I'm going to use this Retribution armor. So, he has just a little bit of silver at the back, and then the rest, kind of the main handle is black, and then the rings at the top is in gold. And with this, you don't need to weather it at all. If you didn't want to, you could just paint it on and leave it, but you can if you wanted to. So a good way to weather metalwork generally is using something like null oil, like a sort of quite a dark black wash. And then for golds, I find that using something like Agrax Earthshade, so more of a brown, gives a nice warmth effect and really complements gold. So if you want to try it, give it a go. You can also highlight the golds with silver as well, maybe perhaps a lighter silver like chainmail or whatever it's called now. What's it called now? Green Fang Steel. That was the other steel I was thinking of. Okay, so he's nearly finished. So all we need to do now is his lightsaber, so the actual blade itself. So we're going to start out with this Lothran blue, and this is going to be the base colour for the lightsaber. So I'm just going to thin this down with some water, and we will just apply a nice coat over the top, and just keep it in mind, just be careful of the rest of the miniature. So first coat's been applied. We will now start to mix in a little bit of white. And also while you're painting, make sure you do, as I've done just then, so long smooth brush strokes, so that helps to make the end result smoother without having to kind of rework it and add glazes and other bits and pieces. So just nice and smooth, and keep it well watered as well. And for this, you don't have to use such a large brush. You can swap out to whatever size you like. So I've added in just a little bit of white, and then we're going to go and paint probably like the first 3/4 of the blade, just leaving the tip just that initial darker blue. And then what we'll do is that we'll keep on adding in a little bit of white each time, and just slowly working further and further back towards the handle of the lightsaber. So I'm going to get him onto the table, and we'll be back in a mo. And so this is how I painted Obi Wan Kenobi for Star Wars Legion. I do hope that you all have enjoyed this video this week. I do apologise for the lack of uploads and content. Recently I've had a lot going on with work, and then we went away on holiday, and which was absolutely beautiful and much needed. So I'm back. I've also got a new painting desk as well, so I'm no longer working within a wardrobe. I've now got my own actual proper desk, and it's beautiful, and the plus side is it does match the bedroom drawers, which is always a plus. So yeah, I'm going to be back to releasing regular videos now, so enjoy everybody. So if you wanted to pick up one of these miniatures for yourselves, then do check out my affiliate link for Wayland Games down in the description below. They're a UK based retailer, and they stock all kinds of amazing miniatures, board games, card games, the lot. If you want it, if you like it, they've probably got it in stock, so check it out. And a little bit goes towards me to help fund future projects, so it's a win-win. You're going to buy it anyway, so may as well buy it from there. And if you wanted to see any stills and reels of this miniature, then do check out my Instagram page at Lynch Paints. There's a link for that down below. And if you're new, subscribe. No, follow would be absolutely amazing. And speaking of subscribing, if you're new to this channel, then a like and subscribe would be massively appreciated. Let me know what was your favourite bit, maybe what bit I could have done perhaps differently. Any comments are always welcome down below. So yeah, leave something that you liked, and again, subscribe if you're new. That'd be awesome. So without further ado, stay safe, stay beautiful, and we'll see you all next time.